Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Talk of the Town. I'm Olin Joint, president of Alpena Community College. My guest this morning, Mr. Matt Dunkel. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Olin.
And
Good
you're
to be
an
here.
instructor in about 3 fields at ACC. What are those?
Well, I teach anthropology, geography, and history.
Very good. That's a great combination. I can see how they relate to each other very well. A lot of interconnection there. How about telling the audience a little bit about yourself? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get interested in an academic career, these subjects, and how long you been at ACC?
I've been at AC since 1995. I grew up in Alpena, went to Alpena High School, graduated in 1978, and went off to the University of Michigan. Got an undergraduate degree, and then decided that I wanted to go to law school. Found that experience not to be my cup of tea, and then transferred into historical anthropological studies. I went to the University of Wisconsin, graduated in 1995, came back, and been here since, and enjoying teaching out at ACC.
Well, that's great, and you have a great reputation with the students, and you're a real contributor to the college campus in a number of ways, so I appreciate what you do for us. The particular occasion for this interview is a presentation that you and your colleague, Dr. Amber Vysotsky, made to the ACC Board of Trustees during the September board meeting, and had the kind of catchy title of Stickiness. So what's that all about?
Stickiness. It has nothing to do with glue, except that it's prevalent in industry, it's prevalent in commerce, and this idea of sort of keeping customers. And I loathe that idea superimposed in the educational experience because students are more than customers. They're human beings who are trying to develop. But the concept does apply to this idea of what holds students at ACC.
Customer relations management is a term I've heard in business,
okay?
And so stickiness is, like I say, a little catchier.
Right. I teach cultural studies, and so I tend to think of what is it about the culture that holds students there. Tom Friedman of the New York Times just recently was talking about the way in which the Middle East has become unstuck. They've lost their grounding in their culture, partly because of a historical change. The Ottoman Empire gave way to the English Empire, and then since World War II there's been a series of strongmen in place, dictators. And that's falling apart now because of communications and the Arab Spring and the fact that social integration is horizontal, not hierarchical. And that's part of what, to use the analogy then to Alpena Community College campus, understanding the student's point of view horizontally and understanding the building of that culture in that way is probably what's going on in order to create stickiness. Stickiness is dependent upon human interaction, and that can only happen horizontally.
And maybe what you're saying then is that the relationships a student has with other students might be more important than relationships with faculty or administrators or staff members. Is that your line of thought?
Whatever the student starts to define as their culture, the way in which they identify with the institution and whatever culture is being created. The data that we found, Dr. Vysotsky teased out of IPEDS data, which is a data bank about these relationships. What she found was that there's a relationship, a strong correlation between graduation rates and the number of faculty to students. The higher the ratio of faculty to students, the more likely a student is to graduate, the more likely the correlation was also high for retention. And so these ideas are closely associated with creating...
So it's both horizontal and vertical, it sounds to me.
I would think so.
Yeah,
I would think that however you build the culture that allows a student to identify a sort of home base, that would be... You know, it's about this idea of pluralism as well. If you look at, again, the Middle East, I'm going to use that because it's in the news a lot, but a pluralistic culture, many different ethnicities trying to find a common culture that we might label pluralism. America's a great example of pluralism. You have in the last election an African-American president defeating a woman in the primaries, and then defeating a Mormon. Think about that in the context of Southwest Asia. That could never happen. You couldn't have that pluralistic mix of social and political relationships.
So does pluralism also contribute to stickiness or retention of students, having them stick with their programs?
That's my idea.
Come back.
We don't have data supporting that,
Okay,
but
yeah.
I guess that's my mini thesis here is that really culture is built as a result of interpersonal relationships.
Right.
And whatever a college can do in order to create that will end up as stickiness.
Very good. There's a famous book called Leaving College, in which Syracuse University professor Vincent Tinto tries to analyze why students leave and conversely why they stay and stick with the program. And he says that the most important factor in a student staying is someone within the first month or so of their arrival had an individual conversation with them. Just took them aside or said hello and what's your name and what are you doing here in the hallway, in the classroom, in an office.
Right.
And that makes a student feel like, well, somebody cares about me.
Right.
Somebody's going to notice if I don't show up tomorrow.
Right. I think Alpena Community College does that very well.
Yeah.
My experience with our faculty is that they really do care about students' lives and about the total development of the student.
That's absolutely right, and I see it in custodians and our mail carrier for sure, administrators and staff members all over. So it's certainly our goal to create a welcoming environment, to make the connections with the students that will validate them as human beings and encourage them with their educational journeys. So I want to thank you for being on the program this morning, and also thank you for the great work you do at ACC, making those connections with the students.
My pleasure. Thanks, Olin.
You're welcome.
This has been Talk of the Town with Nancy Smitham and Dr. Olin Joyton. For a list of events taking place in Northeast Michigan, visit our website at www.wbkb11.com and click on Community. This has been a Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation production.